Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Two Average Joes. And we got Joe St. John here. I got about 30 years of law enforcement. Of course, my partners in crime are here. Robert Baker, I'll let him tell a little bit more about himself. And Kristle Goins is here. Did I pronounce that right, Kristle? Because I have
Yes, sir.
Because I can get a speech impediment real quick. So that one. Robert, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll let Kristle tell a little bit.
Yeah, I'm a trial attorney in Michigan, have been for 25 years. We do a lot of crimes and criminal defense, doing a lot of appellate work and different other practice areas. And Kristle has been working for me. How long have you been working for me now, Kristle?
June or July will be 6 years.
So she started out as a legal assistant. Now she's a paralegal, and I'm trying to get her to go to law school. So
That's right. The way God planned it.
that's exactly right.
That we did. Listen, we were going to have an interview. This is a special segment. We're going to have an interview with Kevin King, who spent a lot of time, and I'll let y'all depend that in there, in the legal system. We'll just put it that way to start off with. And really what we're dealing with is what happens when, the prison system just begins to lie on you because they're tired of you trying to take up for your own rights. And the thing of it is, I know that both of y'all worked on this case. I know both of y'all have a lot to do with it, and I know Kevin lived it. So, Robert, why don't you give us a little bit of setup? You're the beginning here.
Yeah, many years ago, I had an attorney, a local attorney, come to me and said, "Hey, I've got a really good friend that's getting out of prison, and he made himself an excellent jailhouse lawyer, and his name is Lionel Stewart, and he had gotten 37 prisoners out while he was in prison for 35, 40 years. And then I went to his parole hearing and said, hey, I'd give him a job if he got out, which he did, and I did hire him. And one of his proteges, or somebody who he trained really well, his name is Kevin King. And Kevin King, over the years after Lionel got out, and he worked for me for about 6 years and then moved on, was still in prison for murder. And I had been talking to him, and I used him in different, he has specialty in what's called motion for summary dispositions, but that's a technicality that we're not going to get into. But so Kristle and I started working with him while he was in, and we were out. So Kristle, if you could talk about what happened as far as so there was a case out there that was going up to the Supreme Court, and Kevin had his eye on it because he thought it might let him out of prison, called Pool. I think it was People versus Pool or something like that. And it was related to juveniles that were sentenced to life in prison in Michigan, and whether or not it was deemed cruel and unusual punishment for 18 and under. Is that correct, Kristle?
Yeah, it's the mandatory life without parole. So there was a Supreme Court case before that led to Pool coming down, where they decided that it was, from here forward, going to be deemed cruel and unusual. So the individual states were starting to figure out what they were going to do with it. And Michigan heard Pool at the Supreme Court level. And there was Pool and Parks. Parks was determined by the Supreme Court and ruled on. Pool was actually remanded to the Court of Appeals to be ruled on. And that actually just happened within the last 2 weeks, that the decision from the Court of Appeals rolled out on Pool.
Due to retroactivity, right?
Yep.
Whether or not Parks was going to be retroactive, which made no sense if it wasn't, but that's another argument anyway. So, but Kevin had been watching it, and he wanted to file a motion in the court where he was convicted, right? Kristle, is that what we?
Yeah. And the interesting thing is because Pool had been remanded, if you called over to any of the courts or the prosecutors, they wouldn't even talk to us about Kevin's case or cases like Kevin, because they said we had to wait until the decision rolled out in Pool. And we just kind of decided to take a gamble and file it anyways. And in the opinions and their responses and everything, they brought up pool as if it had been decided and was going to be retroactive. But if you verbally asked them, they told you, nope, you got to wait until the decision comes out from pool. But that's not how they were actually processing these cases.
So that case, Joe, just so you know, the Kevin's case, Kevin was following it closely because he saw potential freedom.
Right.
He pressed Kristle and I to file something before this pool decision came out. And it happened to be in a county that has a what do they call it, Kristle? A conviction something
Integrity unit.
integrity unit. They have a conviction integrity unit, and they were really good to work with. And they just about stipulated to what we were pleading. We had a hard time getting Kevin out once the judge said okay, but it finally happened. And Kevin did his initial pleading. Kristle worked closely with him and did all the heavy lifting. And then I just did some tweaking to take out, because when you're really close to something,
Yes.
you write personal stuff in it that really didn't need to be. So, and I have the bar card, so I had to file it. But
Right.
so eventually Kevin got out. Go ahead.
So I was going to say it really helped too, not only because of the integrity unit, but because Karen McDonald in that county, who's the head prosecutor, is big on the juvenile reform
Mm-hmm.
and
So they were really
revamping.
cooperative. I mean, surprisingly so, because I mean, I deal with Ottawa County and Allegan County. Ottawa's not as bad, but Allegan is really tough to deal with on anything. So I was pleasantly surprised. And we ended up getting Kevin out, and he was out for Christmas of 2022. Is that when he got out?
Yep.
Yeah. So he's been out now for just over a year.
Right.
And I hired him as a paralegal to do, and he still works with us today. And that's this episode that you're going to watch that we're talking about right now.
Mhm.
He is talking about while he was in, and there's also in it's hard, people may not believe this or understand it, but prisoners do still have rights, and they actually still have constitutional rights.
Yes.
And in prison, in the Michigan Department of Corrections, it's somewhat a wink and a nod to due process, but you still have due process. And it's under the Prison Litigation Reform Act. And there's a grievance procedure, and it's a 3-step process. There's a written complaint that's filed. And interestingly, the hearing is heard between, there's 2 managers in a corrections department. There's a resident unit manager who's over what's called a assistant resident unit supervisor. And so each unit within the prison system in a certain prison has this hierarchy. And the actual resident unit manager, which Kevin is going to refer to him as a RUM, is the person who hears it. Unfortunately, because most prisoners have a 7th grade education, they cannot themselves do the process. So there's somebody like Kevin, if he was in, and another person that usually who's a prisoner who's made themselves jailhouse lawyers that try to assist in this. But he said 9 out of 10 times the resident unit manager just rubber stamps whatever the Department of Corrections officer has done to the prisoner. And then there's the warden then reviews it, and the director's office reviews it, and then after that, it's called using up your administrative remedies.
Mhm.
Extinguish, what is it?
Yeah, extinguishing your administrative remedies.
Yeah, but anyway, once
Greg's
you've used
boss.
all that up, then you can go directly and you can sue them for a 1983 action, which is a civil rights violation, which I've done a few of those, one in Detroit. Interesting, we could do it on another episode, but
Yes.
did a fight over a typewriter. But so that is kind of where we're at and what Kevin's going to talk about. Kevin is a really big advocate on prison reform because he lived it. And he
Yes.
sees the abuses and the true thing. And I think Joe has mentioned it before. Everybody thinks they're in there watching color TV and cable, and that it's
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
they're
they're living the
not
dream, you know, like
living
they
the
have
dream.
better health care than you do, which I've actually heard read, but we pretty much know this. I'm confident
Right,
with that.
right. But Kristle, did you have anything else to add on that?
Uh, no, I don't think so.
There was one other term I think Kevin used in there that we may want to say so people know what it is. Started with
Sure.
what was that? There was the
There was an ARUS, which is the Assistant Resident Unit Supervisor, and
yes,
that's the person who is just over in the unit. They are over the actual corrections officers, and then the person above that person is a resident unit manager, and then above the resident unit manager is the assistant warden, deputy warden. So that's the food chain as far as the Michigan Department of Corrections goes. He said that they've kind of stripped them of the recently of the ARUS title and some of their authority, but that's for another day.
there's another. I want to say two things because, like I said, I think y'all guys work that you've covered this well. Number one, if a prisoner, now everybody listen to me, has got better insurance than you do, you need another insurance company.
Right.
That's rule number one. Number
Right.
two, listen to Kevin carefully because the level they went to try to lie about him to shut him up to protect other prisoners is pretty elaborate. And inside of this, believe it or not, video, I'm going to have a link and you can go back and read the case with Zamiara.
Right.
Well, I think it's important to note that, you know, what they did to Kevin and what he's pointing out, this isn't a rare occurrence. It's
No.
not a
Random
one-time
act.
thing. Yeah, it's something that, yeah, I mean, at this point right now, we're getting how many calls and emails and JPays from prisoners themselves or from family members, reaching out and crying out, you know, trying to get some help, just get their loved ones decent treatment, not even,
Right.
you know,
We get
above
calls.
board and fair.
Yeah, we get calls every once or twice a week, sometimes more.
You know, Robert always said this. One time we were together and we were talking just face to face, and he said, he goes, you know, everybody think this system is great. Everybody think this system is fair until they're in Kristle in his office crying, realizing all the stuff that's happening that has no fairness to it whatsoever.
Exactly.
Mhm.
When they're in the
Go ahead.
crossroads of what they call justice or the justice system, it's not what you see in TV or books and movies. It's not anywhere like that.
No.
Yeah, it's not what we're being taught and what's being taught to everybody.
Yeah.
You know, it's a far cry from it.
And when you see it firsthand, you can go, okay, people need to be in jail. We all know that. Kevin has said that. We've all said it. Okay. But when you see the way that the meat gets grinded, you also realize there has to be some civilization to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Joe, you being a former law enforcement, I mean, you saw it from the law enforcement side. And
Yeah.
did you realize that the
No.
prison system was the way that it is?
No. I'm going to tell you, and started till I started doing some security work after my career and started doing some stuff dealing with them. Had no idea because here's the problem:
Mhm.
we arrest them, we give them to the prison, right?
Right.
We give them to the jails. Then they go through this process. We go to court and stuff. You don't really ever see that person again. So it's really when you come back and you go, okay, I've talked to 20 prisoners. Okay,
Mhm.
which is an understatement. I've talked more to that. And these prisoners all are in different facilities, often in different states,
Mhm.
telling you the same story.
Right.
Okay, there's some smoke there. Okay, there's some
Right.
fire.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's
So Kevin beats the drum for prison reform, and I'm going to give him a title because titles are free of probably prisoner liaison or
yeah.
Department of Correction liaison because that's what he does a lot of. But what you're going to hear is his experience in the last 35 years and our experience trying to deal with it from the outside, his from the inside. But
Yeah. It's crazy. So everybody pay close attention and listen. videos coming up. And again, we'll see you soon. And y'all guys have a great day and spend a lot of time listening to Kevin. Thank you. Today we have a very special program, and it's on prison reform, but it's a little deeper than that. And we got our special guest star, Kevin King, here, and he's going to help us out here because, quite frankly, it happened to him. One of the things I noticed when we started talking about prisoner reform, talk about the prisons, that everybody thinks everybody's living hunky-dory, you know, in these facilities, and they're not, and it can get extremely complicated. But to the point that the alleged good guys are not being good or being honest. And that's really what we're going to talk about, because this is a strange situation with Kevin where he actually had to sue the prison system. And I'll go ahead, spoiler alert, he won. Okay? So Kevin, I'm going to let you start off with what the case actually became known as. And for everybody that's going to be watching this video, there'll be a link that you can see the documents on this. But Kev, just start. This is your story, and tell everybody what happened to you on those strange times.
It was a very unique situation. There was a case going on in Michigan. It was referred to as the Kane case, MDOC, Kane versus MDOC, that had to do with property issues. And when I say that, it went to everything from clothing to food to classification. And it was a class action lawsuit. However, the majority of the prisoners, either through a lack of education, because the average education level for people incarcerated is the 5th grade, they needed people to obtain documents and to prove what was going on in the correctional system. Well, unfortunately, the MDOC is riddled with retaliation. So the people that were able to fight stood back because they didn't want to be retaliated against. Prison Legal Services of Michigan, led by Sandy Gerard, was in charge of the case. And they often would call me and ask me to do things with the guys that, you know, if you do this, you're going to be thrown into segregation. And so I was a sacrificial lamb in many cases. In 2000, I was at Saginaw Correctional Facility, and the Kane case was manifesting at the time to where it was ready to go to trial. So they called me up and they asked me to obtain documents that would prove that they didn't specifically have enough clothing for prisoners. They were going to take our clothing and then not have the clothing to provide us the proper winter gear, the proper pants, shirts, socks, underwear, so on and so forth. They were transitioning from us supplying our own clothing to them totally supplying clothing. They couldn't do it. So I set off on an adventure of documenting and proving that they didn't have the stuff. So what we did is we created grievances that were check the box, prefab grievances, check the box, sign your name, turn it in. And at Saginaw Correctional Facility, they had over 500 grievances submitted in one night. The warden came in, and the grievance coordinators walked into the warden's office with a cart that was full of grievances and showed it to the warden and said they're all the same, you know, just check the boxes and stuff. And she announced, go get Kevin King. So they came, packed me up, rode me out, and the roller coaster ride began. I went to Brooks Correctional Facility in Muskegon, Michigan. Upon arrival at Brooks, they actually put me in a closet. I sat in a closet and I looked around for a minute and I said, well, this is a supply closet, buffer pads and cleaning supplies, so on and so forth. So I stood there for about a half hour waiting for them to decide what they were going to do. And then I beat on the door and they opened the door. I said I had to go to the bathroom. So I walked down the hallway. They said, all right, go back in there. I said, nah, I don't think so. So that started a whole chain of events. When I got placed in a housing unit, there was a room there that she announced to another prisoner that I was a problem. Well, the prisoner knew me forever, so he came and told me what this rum said, and her name was Corrigan. And so I went and I talked to the rum. Well, she looked at the prisoner that was her clerk and asked what was going on. He said, hey, it's bros before hoes. He said,
Right.
so I told her that I wasn't a problem, that I will stand up for my rights. I will present the problems that need to be resolved. And so I knew that she didn't take kindly to me addressing her. So then a number of tickets followed, and they were unsupported tickets. The rum went
Plain
to
tickets to everybody in the jail system.
it's a misconduct ticket that they write for various things. There's class 1, 2s, and 3s, and they have a wide range of ramifications behind them, just depending on the serious of the magnitude. Well, this rum designated her underling to write me a notice of intent in a substitute. In other words, the notice of intent was I wouldn't get a hearing on it. It is what it is. So the AROS, her underling, decided that she had to write it because she was ordered to do so by her supervisor. So I was thrown in the hole and segregated on a bogus charge of trying to incite a demonstration amongst the prisoners. From segregation, I was released and I went for hernia surgery. Upon returning back from hernia surgery at another institution, the notice of intent was thrown out. It was proven to be bogus. And that was just from me pushing internally within the system. So it ended up that the underling of the rum that wrote the ticket, she admitted to me what was transpiring. So it put me on a heightened alert. And when I beat that ticket, she had another staff member write me a ticket that said that I did a number of things, conversations, so on and so forth. When I pushed administratively through that, then the officer retracted her statement, said, well, that never transpired. Then on top of that, I received another misconduct ticket, and I proved that one to be false too. And please understand that there is a case that was out there, and I'm trying to remember the name of the case, but they find over 99% of the people guilty on misconduct tickets because they have a quota to meet. So it was very unusual that I was beating these at every stage
Right.
that came forth. So the rum wrote a memorandum to the deputy. Now, the deputy warden of the institution, her name was Shirley Harry, remarkable lady, black lady, very, very honest, integrity driven. She was like my handler. Every time she seen me, she would ask what was going on. She knew me for literally decades. And so she was one person that I had in my corner. Well, the staff from this rum were pushing so
Explain
hard
to
that
everybody what a ROM is.
a rum is a resident unit manager. That's the highest person you can get within the buildings outside the administrative personnel. So the magnitude of the retaliation stemmed so far that they upped my security and rode me out,
Right.
based on the premise that I was inciting prisoners to rebel against the prison system. Now, keep in mind, through all the court documents and stuff, there was never one documented incident of me actually doing anything wrong. It was just me standing up and accessing the courts and having other people access the courts. So they upped my security, and I challenged that one. And when I challenged that, they literally sent emails and memorandums to go back and pull the original documents out of my file, backdate the documents, and saying that I did some nefarious wrongs.
Mm.
But I had all the
With
original.
your foul.
Pardon me. Yes.
They
So I
can't-
had all the original documents, and I had all their emails to where they say go back in this file, and then I had all the original documents. I mean, all the altered documents that they put in the files. So I went into court and I litigated in federal court for First Amendment retaliation. Well, at that time, there was no case law that said that they couldn't retaliate for upping a person's security. Retaliation is retaliation, because the way, and I had Robert Holmes Bell out of the Western District of Michigan, who was a judge that disliked prisoners and hated me. His clerk said that he despised me because at every avenue that they came at me, the judge originally said there's no supporting law anywhere in this country, and threw the case out. I took it up to the Sixth Circuit and presented my arguments to the panel of the Sixth Circuit that oversees Robert Holmes Bell, and all the panel of the judges concurred that I presented a claim. The Attorney General's office, which represents the Michigan Department of Corrections, threatened me with an exuberant billing if I didn't drop the case. So the case got bounced back to Judge Robert Holmes Bell. Robert Holmes Bell threw out the case again, and I took it up to the Sixth Circuit again. And the case bounced up there to the Sixth Circuit for oversight 5 times. I litigated the case for 12 years, and proving, in the Sixth Circuit, a panel of judges read all the documents, and they said that I presented all the evidence and all the witnesses, and they provided nothing, zero. And the Sixth Circuit became so frustrated with the case after years of bouncing back and forth, that, which is very unique, they entered judgment on my behalf to come back. So yeah, and then it's become a landmark case. They're quoting the case in all the college cases.
Get
So
them
it
into
was,
that case again, because it's going to be down. The link will be down there to look at it. King versus-
but it's mind-boggling if I uncovered what they did to me, and trust me, they are doing much worse to people. And prisoners are scared to death of standing up and saying, wait a minute, what you're doing is wrong, because of the retaliation behind that. And people that are on the internet can research not only King versus Zamiara, but other cases that from the rapes of prisoners and juveniles and females. Something's wrong behind our prison walls, and nobody's really looking at it. And if they see one thing, they just brush it off as insignificant. But these are people's lives. And because of what's transpiring within correctional facilities, it gives them an inability to, and I hate to use this word because it's the furthest thing from the truth, but there's no rehabilitation. It's people are coming out of the prison system worse than they went in. And I think that this is easily proven by if we just look at the recidivism rates. Number one, the Attorney General's office is representing these people that are known wrongdoers. There is no doubt about it. They're wrongdoers. And when they're doing that, they're enabling more bad behavior from the guards, because they think, so what if I get sued? I get representation and the taxpayers are paying for it. They're indemnified by the state.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things, like on this program, we're going to pound on. This is one of a series that we've had, and we're going to continue on. Look, there's going to be somebody watching this going, well, you were in jail. Well, look, here's the deal, dude. We're either going to have a legitimate justice system or we have nothing but chaos. Okay, that's the fact. It's got to be a legitimate system.
Well, and to my statement on that one is, if and a lot of people are under the premise that prisoners shouldn't even have air.
Right, right.
A society confident in its laws should also be confident in its mercies, and we have to be a society of laws that apply to everybody, and they need to apply to prisoners, prison guard, administrative, police, judges. We need to have something that keeps us corralled. You're going to have bad apples in every segment of life.
This is a fact.
But somebody really needs to sit down and change the prison system.
Right.
It's not doing any good for society.
It's making people worse than they were when they went in there.
Well, and that's obvious when you have a person that's a purse snatcher, and he goes to prison and he comes out and he robs a convenience store, and then he goes into prison and he comes out and then he's carjacking. If there's no rehabilitation, you're just warehousing bad behavior, and then on top of that, you're poking them with sticks and making them hate society even more. It's a vicious circle that we're running.
I will tell you this, because I've read a couple of things on people's comments on stuff, and they act like everybody's at the country club, and nothing could be further from the truth.
Well, and that's, again, the internet is a marvelous thing. You can pull up any information. The inmates, there's case law out there. They're not provided adequate clothing.
Right.
Then the Department of Corrections changed their thing. A prisoner can't even buy his own clothing anymore.
Right.
They don't have jackets. They're coat liners. They don't have waterproof shoes, boots, hats. So they're subject. When they walk to chow, their shoes are literally saturated with water and snow. They don't have the food. They don't have the medical care. There's a plethora of cases out there that prove this, but unfortunately, it's swept underneath the rug. There's cases out there that establish that they don't have. When you read the menu, it sounds good, but they should put non-nutritional garbage.
Right.
Because the diet, I didn't eat in the chow hall for 3 years. For 3 years, I didn't go to the chow hall for an item. I eat refried beans and rice that I purchased.
Right.
But I was fortunate enough to where I was self-sufficient and could do that. The average prisoners can't. So they're forced to eat a diet that is having ill effects on their future health, and it's turning them into diabetics, obesity. It's just, they don't have the proper health care. They don't have the proper food. They don't have the proper clothing, and no cosmetics are supplied to the prisoners.
Yeah.
Their average income for a prisoner is $16 a month. With that, they have to buy their own cosmetics. And you get paid $16 and a tube of toothpaste is costing you $5, 1/3 of your income, and a deodorant's costing you other one, that's 2/3 of your income. They're not coddled. This
No.
is the widest misconception that is through society, that they give us, or they give prisoners everything they need. They don't.
Right.
I just got a call this morning from a guy that said that a 78-year-old man fell and bruised himself all up, and he can't get to health care. And they asked me to help get him. Why are they calling outside a correctional facility for this help? If they have it so good in there, why are these calls coming in?
Yeah, one thing I find is that I know they want people, but again, you have to have a mercy, and there has to be a judicial system that is legal. You can't just send people in there and have them whipped off.
I was very fortunate enough that at the onslaught, I became educated in law, and then Robert Baker, attorney out of Allegan, part of the podcast here. Every time I ran into a situation to where I needed support, legal documents or case law or something, he reached out. Kristle Goins, she reached out. She's been very supportive. They are one law office. Robert is one of the most ethical attorneys that I've ever met, and he's heart driven, with compassion. It's, everybody needs to run a business and make a living and stuff, but I know that he loses ground financially with the help that he gives citizens and prisoners alike. And I emphasize to everybody that listens, when you say, who cares what the prisoners got or receive or how they're treating the prisoners. But if I sat here and picked off any segment of culture, any race, religion, and I degraded them, you would say, I can't do that. I'm a bigot. I'm a racist.
Right.
But when you utter that you don't care about prisoners, which are part of society,
right,
that are make up of the whites, the blacks, the Jews, the Christians, then the only reason that you feel confident that you can hate that group or speak badly about that group is because somewhere in society it's become normal and it's been okay to say, forget that segment. Well, if I said the same thing about the Jews or the Christians, you would just go in an uproar. But somewhere, why as a society do we accept the abuse of prisoners? 98% of the prisoners are going to be released back into society. They are becoming a product of the environment that the taxpayers are paying for.
Mm-hmm. And they're not getting better. They're not getting better. I agree with you.
Not at all.
One of the things, Kevin, I kind of want to end on this one is, I don't think this is a Michigan problem. I think this is a national problem.
Absolutely.
And there's no doubt in my mind. So we're going to be back for other episodes. And an important thing is Kevin and I are going to not drop this. There's going to be other issues and we're going to bring up other things. So
I encourage everybody that watches this podcast to read the cases that you put in there, because these are what federal judges uncovered and abuses going on. This isn't me saying it. This is what the judicial system is saying.
These are legal documents and they will be there. Kevin, I appreciate you sharing everything with me. And look, for everybody else, we're going to be back and y'all guys stay in tune. And this is one of many programs we're going to do. Kevin, thanks again. And y'all guys have a great day.
Thank you.
One, I want to put a shout out to our producer, Dean Teester, because when you see this video, it'll be cut seamlessly with various components of it that we never had the capabilities of doing. And now he's stepped up our game to a new level. And I wanted to say in the beginning, which I forgot to say, is that we've taken kind of a hiatus for various reasons, which we aren't going to go into, but we have both taken a hiatus in our Two Average Joe podcast or video podcast, and we are going to step up our game with our new team. We plan to do a Manson series. I don't know how many it's going to be, right, Joe?
It'll be more than one. We will assure you of that.
Right. And it should be, we have more sources for than we did in the one where we did 26 episodes for the
Yeah, we have
murders.
we got to go revisit some of that. We'll never go 26 episodes on it again, but we've just come across with some information that just blows your mind.
Yeah, that's and also we were going to do something on the Kennedy assassination,
Yeah.
so that's something to look forward to. I don't know how quickly we'll get to it, but I wanted to throw a shout out to Mr. Teester,
Yes.
and other than
Now
that,
if we could only get him to make you guys look a little bit more pretty while he's doing his editing.
I don't think that's possible.
That's a possibility. So